Every video and episode of the It's Cavalier podcast is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoy the show here today, consider signing up. You'll get early access, exclusive videos, podcasts, member shoutouts, and more. And as always, thank you for watching. Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mac. Tonight, our Cleveland Cavaliers took on the Indiana Pacers in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. Hell of a matchup on paper, if I do say so myself. And I'm gonna say this: there were many Cleveland fans that seemed to come into this series believing that Cleveland is miles ahead, just miles better than the Indiana team that we just faced, and that they pose no immediate threat to wiping this team out in this 7-game series. And I'm here to tell you that just is not the case. Give them their damn respect. That said, it should be noted. It has to be noted that Darius Garland remains out. In his place, Sam Merrill making his third straight start. That was sure to play a role, and guess what? It did. That we knew that shit was going to happen. Indiana plays a lot of press. That's an area typically where Darius Garland is really missed because of his ability to handle, his ability to facilitate, his ability to bring the ball up the floor. And after all, he is a much quicker player than some of the other options out there that can bring the ball up the floor, i.e. Max Strus, Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, etc., etc. But here's the thing. I came into this game with the mindset that this is going to be a very tough series, a very challenging series against a team, honestly, that just does not get enough respect. I think the Indiana Pacers went out there tonight and they ended up taking, honestly, I don't want to say they took control of this series. It's just one game at the end of the day, but they controlled numerous aspects of this game. Number one, the tempo, the pace, something that I have tried to tell people, man, look, there were people, even when I dropped the series preview for this series, there were people trying to tell me that this Indiana Pacers offense ain't nothing. You know, we don't have anything to worry about. Some of the things that we saw during the regular season was a straight up fluke. And I'm sorry, man, that's just not the case. This is an Indiana Pacers offense that played with the 7th quickest pace in basketball during the regular season. They are playing at the 5th fastest pace in the playoffs. And tonight is probably going to make things look even crazier after you saw them just straight up you saw them straight up out there making this one a lightning quick pace from start to finish. It just felt crazy. It felt as if as soon as tip-off happened, both teams were running. And look, Cleveland is not a stranger to a quick pace. That is something that they have done all season long. They're top 10 in pace as well. But Indiana has been doing this shit all year long. They are a very efficient basketball team, especially come this playoffs, and they're not going to back down. They don't care what the record says in that win-loss column. They are not going to back down. Now, you would think, to me, the pace was definitely one thing. The other was the perimeter shooting. Look, for what it's worth, I do not believe the Indiana Pacers are going to shoot upwards of 52.8% from three-point distance all season long. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it though. It's not as if they haven't been doing it this playoffs. It's not as if they haven't been doing it this playoffs. They can replicate a efficient performance night in and night out if you do not respect their ability to shoot that shot. And one of the things that burned the Cavaliers, and I am very, very surprised at this, is the corner three. You knew going into this series that Indiana just lit up Milwaukee 55% from three-point distance on corner triples. Yet it almost appeared after every single possession on offense. The Cavaliers were conceding that right or left hand corner triple. I get the need to play zone. I get the need to stop that dribble penetration. But at some point, you have to realize what has been absolutely dismantling people. And, and tonight, it was that corner triple. That is what happened tonight. The Cavaliers have to sharpen up defensively. They have to, and this is the thing. We already knew that Indiana came in as the hottest mid-range shooting team in the playoffs. That is exactly what they went out there and did tonight. They took a number of tough contested mid-range looks. You saw that from not only Miles Turner, but you saw it from Pascal Siakam. You saw it from Tyrese Haliburton. You saw it from a number of Indiana Pacers tonight. We already knew that was going to be the case, right? The problem is that Indiana is also a very good shooting team from the perimeter. So you cannot be over-reliant on the zone. You can't be over-reliant on the man. Frankly, I mean, you play too much zone, you're going to leave your team in a dangerous state, right? It is not as if Indiana can't knock down that three-point shot. They can also, they're terrific drivers over there in terms of Tyrese Haliburton. Pascal Siakam can drive the ball a bit. TJ McConnell can do much the same. But tonight, what really hurt the Cavaliers was that perimeter shot. I just felt like the lack of cohesion defensively, because I feel like there are a lot of defensive miscues. I felt like the communication was off. I felt as if Indiana got away with way too much space on the perimeter. I saw guys fail to rotate. I saw a lot. And we can boil it down to rust. We can boil it down to guys just simply not being on the same page. We can boil it down to Darius Garland not being out there. But the one thing that we have to do is give the Indiana Pacers some credit. We got to give them some credit. And I tried to tell people in that series preview, look, this is not going to be a cakewalk. This series is not going to be 4 or 5 games. This is probably going to be a 6 or 7 game series. I know that people, after watching that Miami series, their confidence was through the roof. They thought Cleveland, was the best thing smoking. And here's the thing, man. This is a different level of an opponent that you are seeing. The Indiana Pacers are not the Miami Heat. They play a very similar type of game to Cleveland in certain regards. That pace that they play at, that can dictate this entire series. And again, it's not as if Cleveland cannot rise to the occasion and play. You saw it at different points tonight where they scratched and clawed their way back after being down. But at the end of the day, you cannot let a team do what Indiana just did and expect to win. You cannot let a team get so many open triples. You can't let that transition offense get the best of you. You cannot be lackadaisical in your closeouts, in your rotations. You cannot do all of these things, shoot poorly, and expect to win. And this is the thing, right? This was not a perfect game from Indiana either. There were moments in this game that Cleveland genuinely had an opportunity to pull all the way ahead and win this, but they routinely shot themselves in the foot because they missed numerous open looks, right? As a collective, they shot 45.9% from the field tonight. That does not sound terrible on paper, but what absolutely crushed them was their perimeter shooting. You got Indiana shooting 19 of 36. That's 52.8% from deep. Cleveland collectively shot 9 of 38 from deep. That is 23.7%. They hit less than a quarter of the triples that they attempted, my friends. They were not nearly as efficient as they need to be at the line, too. They generated 18 freebies to Indiana's 15, but where Indiana hit 93.3% of their free throws, Cleveland hit 72.2% from three from the charity stripe. You cannot be as inefficient as they were and expect to beat a team like the Indiana Pacers. Now, to those of you who question how high octane that this team can be, Indiana is that. I try to tell people, I'm going to continue to try to tell people that this Indiana team is not to be fucked with, man. You got to take them seriously. You have to take them seriously. Am I ultimately worried in the grand scheme of things for the Cavaliers' ability to win this? No. Again, I started this off by saying, one, you do not have one of the biggest pieces of your puzzle in Darius Garland. That certainly played a factor. But again, I'm going to say this. You cannot use all of these excuses to try and dampen or what Indiana did. You have to give them the respect. For as much as we want to blame Darius Garland's injury, for as much as we want to say the Cavaliers' lack of shot making, things of that nature, you got to give Indy their credit. They played a hell of a basketball game, and we can talk about officiating all the live long day. Yeah, I mean, nobody is going to be a fan of the officiating 100% of the time in a playoff series, let alone an NBA game, period. But at the end of the day, the Indiana Pacers deserve to win this game. They went out there and they just shot the lights out. I do not believe that Indiana ultimately wins this series. Credit to the Pacers tonight, though. They took it to the Cavaliers in their home, and they beat them, right? That is exactly what happened. There are no excuses really to be made. I know a lot of people are probably going to take a look at this game and not consider the context of who was or wasn't out there, and they're going to run with it. There will be numerous narratives that are written about how the Cavaliers failed to show up, right? They thought that they got past that first round opponent in the Miami Heat and they did not take Indiana serious. I can already see that being a headline. I can already see people saying that Indiana is going to win this series outside of 5 to 6 games. I can already see all of these things happening. And while I ultimately do not believe that to be the case, while I ultimately believe the Cavaliers will win this, the one thing that I can't rule out is the fact that Pacers are good enough to win. They showed that tonight. I don't care if Darius Garland's out there. If you do not defend that three-point line, if you do not respect your opponent's ability to shoot, you are going to lose. That is just simply the case. Cleveland, you got to take your opponent seriously. You got to know your enemy. You got to understand that they came into this series shooting 55% from three-point range on corner attempts. That should have been game plan numero uno. And again, this is a multifaceted offense in the Indiana Pacers. They are not a one-trick pony. It's not simply the perimeter shot. It's the mid-range. They've been quality from inside the painted area as their 10th in rim field goal percentage at 68.1%. They can do just about everything out there from an offensive perspective. And the craziest part about it is that they don't really, you can say that Tyrese Haliburton is the head of the snake. And while factually, from a statistical standpoint, you could say that that is accurate, it's not just Tyrese Haliburton out there. Pascal Siakam is an offensive juggernaut at times. You saw Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith go out there and impact the game. They were two of Indiana's highest scoring, well, at least in the case of Andrew Nembhard, scored 23 points tonight, led all Indiana's scores on a very efficient 7 of 10 from the field, including 5 of 6 from three-point distance. And here's the other thing, right? Indiana, when they needed to knock down a shot, when they needed to get let's say a timely bucket, right? When you needed somebody to go out there and knock down a shot, they got it, right? The clutch shots, I'm struggling to find the right words for it, but you guys understand what I'm saying, right? When they needed a basket to be made, their guys went out there and made it. That's what happened in game 1. That is exactly what happened. You knew that they were going to bring it from a defensive aspect. The press coverage, that's something that has given Cleveland fits at times this year. It's not just the Pacers who do it, but the Pacers are one of the best teams in the league at playing that style of defense. They're right up in your face. They're making it very, very hard to inbound the basketball. They make it hard to get into the half court. You saw that, by the way, with Ty Jerome, right? There was a singular possession. I believe it was in the third quarter where Ty Jerome tried to get the ball past half court and got called for an 8-second violation. That type of stuff is why you miss a Darius Garland. That type of stuff is why you miss one of your best ball handlers out there, one of your best facilitators. It's one of those things where I do not want anybody. If you needed a fucking difference maker, if you needed a reason to believe that Darius Garland is one of the biggest reasons for this team's success, tonight is probably a good one for you to watch. Simple as that. Never question Darius Garland's value again. Yes, Darius Garland likely would not have helped with the ridiculous three-point defense. But at the end of the day, the offensive production that it was lacking, the speed out of the backcourt, the inability to get it past half court, if that don't show you his value, I don't know what the fuck will. Again, credit to the Indiana Pacers tonight. They played like the better team. They were cohesive. They executed their game plan to perfection. They were efficient as hell. They were locked in. All credit where it's due. And these are all things during the preview that I was trying to tell everybody out there. You cannot take this team too lightly. Everybody was laughing. You found that out tonight. Again, the context matters. Darius Garland, when you're one of your 5 starters not being out there, that will absolutely matter. But in the grand scheme of things, nobody is going to look at that. And they're only going to look at the win, especially if you're a Pacers fan. You're loving this. You just went into your opponent. You just went into the number 1 seeded team in the Eastern Conference's house and beat them at home. Doesn't get any better than that if you are an Indiana Pacers fan. I got to admit, just as I am a Cavaliers fan first, I am. But I'm also I entered this series, especially coming after that Miami series where people were just, the confidence was through the roof. I came into this series trying to be as objective as possible. And this is why, right? You really find out what your team is made of once you get to these latter rounds of the postseason. And the second round is where that generally starts at. I just think that you have to be able to understand your opponent. And I feel like the Cavaliers did not. And I think some of that can be you can place some of that blame on the perimeter shooting of the Cavaliers. You can blame some of that on the lackadaisical defense. You can blame Kenny Atkinson for some of the rotations that he put out there tonight. But at the end of the day, I think you just got to own up. You lost. You lost. There is no excuses to be made tonight. I don't care if you want to talk about DG's injury. I don't care about anything else. The Cavaliers went out there and lost. To those people out there, you got to just understand where you lost. You got to give credit where it's due. Again, I do not believe this team is done. I'm not going to be in the chat panicking like I see some people doing. I'm not going to sway too far in one direction because we've seen how that goes. But at the end of the day, if this does not put you on notice, if you're the Cavaliers, if you're a fan of the team, this does not put you on notice to the Indiana Pacers, I don't know what the fuck will. I mean, Donovan Mitchell did his very best to keep the Cavaliers in this game. That was a magnificent performance from an offensive perspective, all things considered. He did shoot 1 of 11 from three-point distance. He adds to that. But the defense's attention was clearly focused on Donovan Mitchell, right? Donovan was carrying hard. He was carrying hard tonight. Evan Mobley, he did his best. He was the most efficient Cavalier in certain regards out there on the glass, just from a pure offensive production. He was 9 of 13 from the field, 20 points, 10 rebounds, finished with another postseason double-double, shot 2 of 5 from three-point distance. These are things that we like to see, but in the grand scheme of things, the most important stat is a W, especially at this point of the year. I give a damn. If Donovan Mitchell shoots 1 of 20 from 3-point distance. As long as the Cavaliers win, I give a fuck. But it just looks even worse in a loss. It truly does. And there will be people who use this singular performance to say that we need to shorten the rotation or we need to take a guy out or two. But I think that until Darius Garland returns, it's going to be very hard to do these things because essentially they played a 9-man rotation tonight, right? You played your 5 starter or your 4 typical starters in Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, Jared Allen, and Evan Mobley, but you substituted Darius Garland for Sam Merrill. You had Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter, who are obvious, dude, they're going to play high minutes. And then Dean Wade and Isaac Okoro, who many people, including myself, figure to be big parts of this series for their defensive acumen. And here's the thing. I tried not to sugarcoat it. I was completely objective in my preview for this. In my X factors, I listed Dean Wade as an X factor purely because of his ability to defend out there. Pascal Siakam has kind of cooked Dean Wade all season long, and that continued at points tonight. That is that is what happened tonight. He cooked him. He ended the season 10 of 13 from the field with Wade as his primary defender. And I'm sure when the defensive statistics come out for this game tomorrow, that's usually about 12, 13 hours or so after the game is played. I think that you're going to see that Dean Wade probably got torched again, right? There are numerous, and this is the thing. I do not want to lie to people. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but I'm also going to try and add a little bit of context here too. Dean Wade did play some solid defense on numerous possessions, and sometimes it was just better offense. I saw, and this is the case during the regular season at times too, on certain possessions where Siakam made the field goal. There was good defensive positioning. There was a solid contest. There were things like that occurred on many of these possessions from Dean Wade, but Siakam just made a better shot. Especially, you saw this in the regular season come from the mid-range a lot of the times, and sometimes even around the rim, where he got Dean Wade. But at the end of the day, nobody cares. You got to step up. You got to stop your man. And that is why I figured Dean Wade and Isaac Okoro will likely be bigger components in this series than they were in the Miami series. I know Dean Wade played some really solid games against Miami, but I think that him and Isaac are probably going to be depended on during this series a lot for their defensive ability and stopping a Siakam and stopping a Haliburton and trying to put the clamps on Andrew Nembhard, these are difficult things to do. These are very talented offensive players, right? Tyrese Haliburton, man, there was a run where Haliburton was just absolutely cooking, and he would end the night with, if I'm not mistaken, 22 points and 13 assists. Go figure. The man was leading the playoff field in assists after the first round concluded. I believe he entered this series with maybe 49 assists total in 5 games prior to tonight's action. And he was responsible for over a quarter of Indiana's passes in that first round series. I mean, you saw that on full display. You saw that. I think I pointed this out in the preview as well, but it was absolutely ridiculous the amount of ball movement and facilitation that they were doing as a team. And it starts with Tyrese Haliburton, who the man has been at the center of it all in terms of their ball movement. He entered tonight with 431 of Indiana's 1,727 total passes. That's basically a quarter of the passes in the postseason coming from Tyrese Haliburton's hands. And that was no different tonight, as he would finish with 13 assists and got it to his guys in a variety of ways. But what makes this Pacers team so frustrating to deal with at times from an offensive perspective is that it's simply, a lot of people boil this down to drive and kick. And I want people to understand you need to go and watch the film because it's not all drive and kick. This Indiana Pacers team moves the basketball along the perimeter better than many teams. Maybe they may be the best team in the NBA from in terms of a pure facility from a pure ball movement standpoint. They may be the best team in the NBA doing that. And I know that Cleveland is up there too, but when your team is entering the second round as the leader in total assists, this is the thing. They entered play tonight leading the NBA in the playoff field in total assists with 30 per game. 30 per game that they've doled out during the course of the playoffs. In the 5 games prior to tonight, that is exactly what they had been doing. They've just been very good. They've been very good, and there's no other way to put it. I want to sugarcoat it, but I can't, man. You got to just you got to call a spade a spade. You got to keep it 100. And I got some of their some of their ratings, not just offense. I got some of their overall ratings in the postseason right here, right? They entered tonight with the 5th quickest pace in the playoffs at 97.47. They had an offensive rating that was second best in the playoffs at 118. Their defensive rating, their top 10 out of the 16 playoff field at 111. They are 3rd in points per game at 117.8. They are 3rd in 3-pointers made per game. You know, nudge, nudge. That's exactly what the fuck they did tonight. 14.4 per game, though, prior to tonight's action. They came in shooting 39.3% from 3-point distance, which is second to only the Cleveland Cavaliers. And as I stated already, they were dealing out the most assists per game among the current playoff participants at 30. Second closest team, if I'm not mistaken, was the Cleveland Cavaliers. They moved that damn ball. And you look to the right-hand side over there, you got their top scorers, their top performers in that regard offensively. You got Pascal Siakam, who entered tonight at 19.8 points per game. Tyrese Haliburton, 17.6. Miles Turner has been a very big part of their offensive outputs so far at 16. And then Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith, Ben Mathurin, TJ McConnell off the bench. These are guys who have been very, very impactful in their playoff rotation. And, you even saw Thomas Bryant get some run out there and make some plays, especially on the defensive standpoint where he rejected a shot, right, and altered a couple more. You got to give them their fair share. For as deep as we want to talk about how deep this Cavaliers team and this Cavaliers rotation can run, because at times when you got everybody healthy, they can legitimately run 11, 12 deep. But Indiana has a very deep roster of players themselves, and they're not overexerted like we see from the likes of the New York Knicks at times. They know how to use their guys, and they have a very excellent coach and who understands playoff basketball in Rick Carlisle. These are guys who know what they're doing. So you gotta give credit where it's due, man. You got to understand your opponent. And I just feel like the Cavaliers did not understand the assignment tonight. They just did not understand that. Very, 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 very well coached team. Well-oiled machine entering the second round. And if there is one thing that I want people to understand, it's that this Indiana Pacers team is not Miami. If you're a Cavs fan, I want you to understand the threat of the Indiana Pacers not only carrying this series to 6 or 7 games, but the threat of them outright winning this series is possible. It's very, very possible. Do I think it's likely? No, I do believe that the Cavaliers ultimately win this one, but I don't believe it's any less than 6 games. It's going to be a tough competitive series. I said as much in the series preview, but I got to call a spade, man. I got to call a spade. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I'm probably not going to be as homerish as some people have heard me be in the past. I'm just not going to do it because performances like tonight, this was just an ugly one, man. You shot 9 of 38 from 3-point range. Your defensive positioning, your rotations, your closeouts, they were piss poor on the defensive end. Just not a good first performance entering the second round. That said, I still believe the Cavaliers will bring this one home in no less than 6 games. But again, man, this just proves to you how important players like Darius Garland are to the grand scheme of how your offense runs. And you can criticize him defensively. I don't think he's nearly as bad as a defender as many people tend to think he is. I just think that he is undersized. He can be exploited in that fashion, especially against teams that try and get mismatches and switches on you. And Indiana is one of those teams. They know how to do that. I saw them do that numerous times tonight with Pascal Siakam getting switched onto a Max Strus at times underneath the rim. I saw Miles Turner do it tonight too. I saw both of them take take the opportunity on switches to get either Sam Merrill or Max Strus, and that is not an ideal spot for either of those two. And they try. Sam Merrill definitely tries from a defensive standpoint, but size absolutely matters in these types of matchups. So you got to be able to try and fight over those mismatches and switches the best you can. All right. It was not good all the way around. There were very few bright spots. There were some. Evan Mobley knocking down 2 of 5 from 3-point distance, him finishing with a 20 and 10 double. That was nice. That was cool, right? Jared Allen doing his best to posterize Miles Turner. That's cool and all, but the thing that most people care about, it's a dub. And honestly, it's not going to happen when you're not playing team-friendly basketball. And one of the things that we saw tonight was the Cavaliers, they were way, way too reliant on Donovan Mitchell and Ty Jerome to kind of carry it home. Those two alone accounted for 50 of Cleveland's 98 total shots. That's over half. That's like 52 or 52% of the total field goals for Cleveland. That cannot happen. There has to be more. There has to be more diversity in your offense and the volume of your shots. And I know Darius Garland being out kind of skews things, but it's probably not the greatest showing. It's probably not going to be the greatest night for you when you have 2 players combining for 50 attempts. And this is a very talented Cleveland team, right? But you got to give credit where it's due, and that's exactly what happened to the Cleveland Cavaliers in this victory by the Indiana Pacers. With that said, probably a great place to enter the chat. Let's see. Let's start off with Nick, who says the zone has to be used extremely sparingly. I mean, what did I say in the preview? I hope that you guys watched it. I truly do. If you haven't, go back and look at it, because many of the things that occurred tonight, I said exactly what would occur. I outlined it. That's exactly what we saw in many regards tonight, because this is not an overly complicated Pacers team, but the problem is that they do what they do so very well that it's hard to stop at times. It truly is. And you saw that play out at points tonight where they just looked like they could not be stopped. They looked like they could not be slowed down. The ball movement cannot be contained. The shots were not being contested. It just was all going to shit. But the zone, I don't necessarily believe it's ineffective. I just think that they have become over-reliant upon it at times. And again, when you're talking about the dribble penetration that can really, really impact your defense. If you're a Tyrese Haliburton or you're a TJ McConnell and you're looking to drive in and attack the heart of this defense, you can do it based upon what you've seen. You can't be over-reliant on the zone. You can't be over-reliant on the man. You can't really steal a page out of the Pacers playbook and go full or half-court press, because they'll probably up the ante on you, right? But at the end of the day, I trust that Kenny Atkinson will find the best balance for these things. I truly do. I think the Cavaliers will end up figuring it out. Fate 80, I've never known how to pronounce that. But he says we can't go 9 deep in a real series. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that you can, considering who was out tonight in Darius Garland, I still think you can roll 9 deep. I mean, I still would play DeAndre Hunter and Ty Jerome off the bench and a sizable chunk of minutes. I still consider giving Sam Merrill his typical 15 to 18 minutes a game in the postseason because of what he brings to the table from a offensive standpoint, from a gravity standpoint. Just in general, I think Sam Merrill typically leads to success for the Cavs. And you saw that against Miami, right? Where he stepped up in 2 of those games and drew the start. And that's part of the reason why Kenny Atkinson gave him the first crack at starting tonight with Darius out again. So I think those 3, at the very least, you play. I think you definitely continue playing Dean Wade. I don't care how things looked tonight. You saw the impact that he brought to the table against Miami. You've seen the impact that he can bring all season long, especially on the defensive end. That's 9 already, right? I think you'll run at least 9. I don't think you go 10 deep. So somebody may be up for losing some minutes. I don't know if you end up cutting Isaac Okoro's minutes a little bit, but even Isaac, you can make a real case still that Isaac is going to be important in this series. And again, if the Cavaliers end up winning this series and advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they will very likely meet the Boston Celtics, you're going to need some really, really good defensive players out there. And I think Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, those are 2 guys that you're going to keep in your rotation. But at the end of the day, I just named off at least 5 to 4 or 5 players off the bench that are probably going to still play when Darius gets back. So I don't think they go any lower than 9. I would be very surprised if Kenny Atkinson shortened it to 8. I really truly would. Skylar Collins says Pacers in 6. They always overlooking Indiana. Look, I've been saying it all all live stream. I do believe that the Indiana Pacers are a real threat. I did say that I believe that this series would go 6 games at the very least. And what does that mean? Obviously, that means that Indiana will win some games. Tonight, they won. Can they win 3 more? That's the question. That is TBD. TBD. But got to tip my cap. Got to tip my cap to the Indiana Pacers tonight. They absolutely played a hell of a game. D. Jackson says, wow, Mac, we just lost this one. The Pacers stayed focused and took care of business on the road too. Yeah, they came in to our house and they took one, man. And that hurts, but you got to just tip your cap to them. Xbeat says, good night, Cavs fans. Horrible Kenny game. Not the best Kenny showing, got to admit. Shannon Sibley says, now we'll really get to see how good our boy Kenny is. Make the adjustments and take back home court. We got this. I truly believe that they'll end up winning this series too, but Kenny definitely has to adjust. And we all know, right? Even your boy, right? Listen, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I try to give JB Bickerstaff the benefit of the doubt, but part of JB's issue was the lack of adjustments. I believe that Kenny has shown that he is capable of doing that, and he's done that all season long. And I don't have any doubt in my mind that Kenny will adjust to what he saw, but I can't blame it all on Kenny. The perimeter shot making was just ridiculously bad for Cleveland tonight. Failed to knock down even a quarter of their triples. It was just a combination of things, if you will. I can't point to any one thing. There were numerous things that went badly for the Cavaliers tonight. Oren Smith says choke city. I don't necessarily believe it was a choke. I just believe that they failed to do what they needed to do to win. Pee-wee's Burnt Pizza says, I tried to tell fans that Pacers are legit. So did I, man. He also says, I'm not panicking yet, but must win game 2. Yeah, you can't go down 0-2 to this Pacers team and expect it not to be a dogfight, because each and every one of these games is likely to be a dogfight. Dr. Claw 77 says, ridiculous opponent 3-point shooting due to just horrific defense. Cavs can't assume they won't do it again. They need DG back, and one big lineups need to have 2 of Hunter, Wade, Okoro. Wholeheartedly agree. And what I have been seeing from a lot of Cav fans leading up to the series and right during this game is, they won't do this again. This is just an outlier, when the reality is that could not be farther from the truth, right? They came in shooting the NBA's second best from 3-point distance to only the Cavaliers. They shot 39.3% from 3-point distance entering the second round. They shot over 55% on those corner triples. And guess what they did tonight? They lit the Cleveland Cavaliers up from the perimeter. Not only the perimeter, it was especially in those corners. And really, when you look at their shot chart, right, overall, you see that they knocked down shots from all over the perimeter. They truly did. From the left slot, from the right slot, from the left wing, from the right wing, from above the break. They drilled shots from 3-point distance in every conceivable way, in every conceivable zone, in every conceivable location. They're very capable of replicating, at the very least, a 40 to 45% shooting performance in any one of these games, especially if Cleveland does not shore up the defense and close out, rotate accordingly. Don't overhelp, because we saw, God, man, we saw a lot of that tonight. A lot of overhelping. And that's a kind of a growing trend in terms of NBA defense. We see a lot of overhelping. It's not just the Cavaliers. We see every team do it, but some teams do it more than others. Brilliant Damage says Pacers shot over their heads and bad game by Kenny. Honestly, this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Yes, you can fully chalk it up to Indiana shooting a ridiculous 50+% from 3-point distance. But again, it's not far-fetched to believe that they shoot upwards of 40% in each one of these games. They've been doing it all playoffs long. Now 6 games. You got a 6-game sample size. I believe that is enough to formulate a proper opinion on what they are capable of and what they're incapable of. And what we saw tonight is that they are absolutely capable of knocking that shot down, shooting the lights out. Dr. Claw 77 says, Mac chopped the hair. I did. If you're not watching the stream live via video over on YouTube or over on X, yeah, it was time. I had to cut my hair, man. Had to do it. D Jackson says, wow, nice haircut. You cut your dreads off. Yeah, had to let the locks go, man. Tom K says, well, at least people who claim DG is not key can hold this one. Yeah, and I never want to be that guy to say and point to one specific performance and say, oh, this is why you need X, Y, and Z player. But there are some occasions where you can justifiably say, yeah, this is why you miss a specific player. And I think tonight, considering the context, considering the importance, considering the time of year, this is a second round against a very, very good team in the Indiana Pacers. You need Darius Garland. If that was not clear, I hope you found that out tonight. Dr. Claw also says the 3-point defense and the egregious missed calls were annoying. Yeah, annoying. Yes, they absolutely were. Cavs in 6 is what Island says over here. HJ17 Gaming says Cavs in 5 still shot 20% from 3. Nice haircut, though. Listen, I don't want to. I really don't want to mince words when I say this. This is exactly what I was talking about in that preview, and what I'm saying tonight. What I've said numerous times. This Indiana Pacers team needs to be taken seriously. You got to take them seriously. XB says tie worst game of the year. I mean, when you look at what, from the contextual standpoint, this man shot, he took over 20 attempts. He was 8 of 20 from the field, 1 of 4 from 3-point range. He scored 21 points. He was a plus 10 tonight, one of the better plus minuses. If I'm not mistaken, he actually led the Cavaliers in plus minus tonight. So I don't think it was necessarily the worst game of his postseason, or the year rather. I just think that Indiana, they played some really good defense. You knew that after Ty ended the regular season on one of the top 3 6 men in the league. And frankly, in that first round against Miami, he was ridiculously efficient on short volume, short minutes. You knew that he was part of the game plan from a defensive standpoint, and they did what they could. They made life difficult for him when he tried to inbound the ball. They made it difficult for him when he tried to bring the ball up the floor. You know, he even committed an 8-second violation trying to get it into the half court, and they absolutely clogged the paint. They made sure to keep a man in front of him so he couldn't get to his patented floater too often. They executed their defensive game plan to near perfection at specific points. It wasn't all perfect. You know, they very much could have lost this game had the Cavaliers did a couple of things differently. But again, you cannot take away from how well that they executed their plan tonight, and they beat the number 1 team in the East on the road. That's a big confidence booster. Whew. Pee-wee's Burnt Pizza says, I don't know, fans thought this would be a cakewalk. Let's game 2. Yeah, I mean, many people, it really legitimately felt, and I can't speak for everybody, I can only speak for myself, but from what I've seen from the comments over on YouTube, from the comments over on various social media platforms, it seemed as if a lot of people felt that this Indiana Pacers team would be a cakewalk, and that could not be further from the truth. S. Polk says, ha 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 ha. Cavs lost game 1 at home to the Pacers, loser franchise. And again, you got people, it's all fair game, right? What else can I say? I think, do I believe that they're a loser franchise? Obviously not, but hell, that was a bad loss tonight. The only champion says, bro, I'm not panicking, but wow, that's fair. Wendell Thomas says the Pacers are good enough to win the series, but it's the first game. Absolutely. That's a sentiment that I share. I think that I think many people expected this team just to roll over. And I think their confidence was overinflated by that Miami series victory, where you can clearly tell that Miami is not in the same tier as the Indiana Pacers or the Cleveland Cavaliers. These are very, very different levels of opponent between the first and second round. The only shampoo says, I could feel our energy drained after this game. Look, the one thing that did not really need it to be stated, I would hope that many people knew this coming into this series, is that this team in the Indiana Pacers operate with a very quick pace. 7th during the regular season, 5th during the postseason. This is going to be a tiring series. And one of the things I don't think is being said a lot is that you really don't want this series going longer than 6 games. Hell, you really don't even want it going 5, because you do not want to face whoever comes out of the other side of the Eastern bracket, whether it be the Knicks, or the Celtics. You don't want to face that Eastern Conference Finals participant with tired legs. You just don't. So you want this series over sooner rather than later, because they play at a very quick pace. And again, Cleveland does too. But when you allow a team to control the tempo, and that's what happened. Make no mistake, that is exactly what happened. I don't care what anybody tells you. You watch the fucking game, it'll tell you that Indiana controlled the pace the entire game. It just, when you do that, you have a good chance of winning the game. You really, truly do. And that's what happened. They won. You got to give credit where it's due. The only champion who says, I'm not giving up, but man, they hit a lot of threes. Yeah, they did. That's exactly what happened. Tuna Sports says, Mac tried to tell y'all, don't overlook the Pacers. This could be a 6 to 7 game series. I did. I really hope they took heed of that, because that's exactly what happens. Oren Smith says, I'm happy away from Cleveland. If Lifesbook says, yeah, for all of you people saying that, start Ty over Darius and that we're better without him, where are you at? Because when Ty's figured out, he just starts jacking shots and looks pressured. And look, I have no doubt in my mind that Ty Jerome will bounce back, but you got to keep in mind the Indiana Pacers do feature some of the better guard defenders in the league in the postseason. And honestly, they have a lot of lengthy defenders that they can throw at Ty Jerome. And Ty, at 6'5", he's not a small dude, but he's not the quickest. He's not the best athlete. And he can be pressured into turning the ball over or into a ill-advised shot. And you know what? One of the other things that needs to be said is the shot selection tonight was really bad at certain points. The one that sticks out to me was Dean Wade, right? Getting the offensive rebound around the rim. He, instead of kicking it back out to the perimeter to an open shooter out in the corner or above the break, which there were multiple Cavaliers that were open on this specific possession, he chose an ill-advised shot around the rim. It's stuff like that. Each one of these possessions can add up, and that's what happened. Jimmy J says, humble pie. Nothing else to say. I mean, you just got to keep it 100. You got to keep it 100. Pretty Brown Eye says the Cavs have to respect the 3-point shot of everyone. Absolutely, they absolutely need to respect everybody's ability to knock down that 3-point shot. And I think you kind of found that out tonight the hard way. You truly did. Matthew Ellis says, gonna lose next game, win one in Pacers Town. And they closed the series. I don't know how to read that. I'm sorry. Jay Quest says it was rust. Cavs weren't even playing the passing lanes until the second half. Now, there was a concerted effort in the second half from a defensive standpoint to try and contain a little more of that ball movement. But again, this is a Pacers team that passed the ball nearly 87 times more per game than Cleveland in round one. they're going to get that ball moving. It's not just drive and kick. There are a lot of moving pieces. There are a lot of pet actions. There are a lot of things that lead to, to pivots, right? And when I say pivot, I mean if one action looks like it's going to fail, they can quickly pivot to another. There's just so many moving parts to that Indiana Pacers offense, and I think that they've been showing how well that they can operate, how efficient they can operate through the first 6 games of their postseason. Produced by Cape says, yeah, game 1. I'm assuming this is an Indiana Pacers fan. Credit to you, man. Credit to you. Pee-wee's Burnt Pizza says, come on, folks. Cavs still learning how to win in the playoffs. Time to adjust and get game 2. And yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm not going to make any excuses tonight. I just legitimately feel like the Cavaliers did not play nearly as well as they're capable of playing on both ends of the court. And I also give Indiana all credit where it's due. But it would be foolish to look, even the Cavaliers won this game tonight, I still probably would not have felt great considering some of the things that we saw. Had they came back all the way, yeah, a win is nice. A win feels good. That's what everybody cares about the most. But I looked at, I saw a lot of things tonight that I did not love. And I hope that they figure it out. I really truly do. I'm at a point right now where I do believe that they figure this out. I do believe that they will. I think they will end up winning in close to 6 games. We'll see. We shall see. Jay Quest says you're huge in Indiana, Mac. Look, man, I mean, whether or not people agree with what I'm saying or not, that's up for debate. That I'm trying to be as objective as I can. While I do believe that Cleveland ends up winning this series in 6 games, I just don't think it's going to be nearly as easy as a lot of people thought that it would be entering. I just did not believe that. Dr. Manhattan says, I highly doubt the Pacers shoot 54% from 3. I can't wait for Darius to come back. I need him. Ty was horrible tonight. They need to stop overhelping, and they need to play better defense start to finish. I do not believe, Dr. Manhattan, that they will shoot 50+% or better, but they're also probably going to shoot well in most of these games. It's, I don't think they're going to have record-breaking performances. I don't think they're going to light the Cleveland Cavaliers up in every single one of these games. But I would be crazy to say to myself they're not capable of replicating a similar performance, especially if Cleveland does not oblige and pressure the three-point line and close out, That it can happen again. That's what I'm trying to say. It can happen again if they don't respect their opponent's ability to shoot the basketball. D Jackson says Tyrese got to be feeling good right now. Yeah, I mean, what did the graphic that I put up say? Tyrese came into this series averaging 17.6 points through the first round, and it's only going to go up after tonight's performance, in which he was able to score 22 on a pretty efficient 9 of 15 from the field. But perhaps the best quality that he brought to the table tonight was, again, that ball movement, that dribble penetration, the drive and kick, just the overall playmaking aspect of what he brought to the table tonight. You have to feel good about having a double-double of that variety if you are Tyrese Haliburton, knowing that you did that against the number 1 team in the East and on the road. These are 2 things that Tyrese is probably going to feel very, very good about after tonight. D Jackson says, will Garland play Tuesday? I truly hope so. I can't say, right? I mean, unless some information has come out during this live stream, I have no idea. I mean, I'm in the same boat that you guys are, right? But I think that had this been a do or die game, had this been a elimination game, I think Darius Garland does his best to suit up. I just think with toe sprains, I think that's what the official injury is. They're tricky. I heard them mention during the broadcast, and I've heard it the reporting be numerous times that there is no structural damage. But had this been the regular season, that this would have likely resulted in Darius Garland sitting for at least a week or two, so that they could, get him back to full strength. But again, there's a difference between the regular season and the postseason. We all know these things. And so I think had this been an elimination game, Darius probably goes out there and tries to play, but remains to be seen. And mind you, full disclosure, I did enter tonight feeling as if they could have won this game even without Darius Garland. And I do believe that they can win against the Pacers without Darius at the end of the day. But you're not going to win if you don't defend the three-point line, if you don't knock down more than 25% of your triples, and you're heavily reliant on a two-man group of Darius and not Darius, Donovan and Ty to carry you offensively. Just not going to happen, man. Just not going to happen. D Jackson says the Cavs shot too many threes. Mac, let's be for real. Yeah, they did. I think they tried to get themselves into a rhythm after a long layoff between the first and second round. And I do feel like they neglected the painted area at times tonight where things were working. There were numerous possessions tonight where where Evan rolled to the rim, where Donovan Mitchell would get him the ball, whether he would roll to the rim or drive in himself and attack that painted area and make it, right? And again, there's solid defense at times being played by Indiana, but Evan on specific possessions was too much to handle for Indiana. And I just kind of feel like they went away from that. Ditto for Jared Allen, who would have finished 6 to 7 from the field tonight for 12 points of his own. There were numerous possessions in which I genuinely felt like they should have just given the ball to the bigs and asked them to go to work. But again, Indiana is capable of adjusting. They're not just going to watch things happen and not adjust to what is going on out there. And I feel like they did. Right, they made things more difficult. There were a lot of the painted area was being clogged. Right, especially one of the worst things that can happen to your team is if you are not knocking down that 3-point shot, and the team feels confident enough to clog the painted area. And again, this is to the folks. I think D Jackson here who says the Cavs shot too many threes. If your opponent is clogging the paint and they're forcing you to take the three, that's exactly what happened. I mean, you can go back and watch the game, but to me, I think that's a big part of what happened tonight is the Cavaliers, they got forced into some very, very bad or ill-advised shots. And frankly, some of that was on them. Again, I already pointed out one of the possessions by Dean Wade. But at the end of the day, the Cavaliers did themselves no favors. They truly did. They truly did. It just was not a good performance all the way around. RC Collins said, had this been the All-Star game, DG would be playing. See, a couple of years ago where he was healthy enough to play in the All-Star game, but sat out games prior and after. I mean, yeah, I think that's fair to say, but it's a far cry from making an argument about whether or not he would play in a postseason game that is not an elimination game, because ultimately it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. The Cavaliers have a larger goal in mind than simply beating the Indiana Pacers. You got to beat the Pacers to ultimately get there, but beating your second round opponent is not the ultimate goal. It's just part of it. It's part of the journey towards getting there. And if you felt legitimately like you could afford DG to get at least one more game of rest, then you sit him. And I know a lot of people are going to look at the fact that the Cavaliers lost this game and use that as some type of validation that he should have played tonight. But at the end of the day, if your guy is not 100%, or if he's not 75, and again, this is a toe sprain. These are very, very difficult things to manage from an explosiveness standpoint, from the ability to move around on the court out there, which is part of the reason why you wanted him out there, because that full court press, you wanted him out there because he is one of the few guys capable on this roster. Donovan Mitchell is another one, obviously, but he's one of the few guys on this roster that's capable of getting up the court in a hurry. And if your toe is fucked up, that's kind of hard to assess. So fans, we all like to play Twitter doctor, social media doctor, but at the end of the day, we don't know what the fuck we're talking about. We're speculating. Everybody wants him to play, but if he's not healthy enough to play, he's not going to go out there. This is a man who's played 75 games this year in the regular season. That is the most of his career. He missed 2 games against Miami with this very same injury, obviously. And there are numerous outlets saying that is a more serious, it's of more serious concern. So trust me when I say this. If Darius Garland was healthy enough to play, he would have been out there. Just the facts. I don't care what people have to say about that. I don't care if you disagree with me, but if the man was healthy enough to play, he would have been out there. And the context of what type of game this was, i.e., a non-elimination game, that cannot be discounted here. Had this been a elimination game 4, or the Cavaliers were on the brink of being eliminated in 5 to 6 games, I do believe Darius tries, but there's no real way of knowing that. It truly isn't, right? It's just, it's a risky move, but you have to have that larger goal in mind. And that's probably a really difficult thing to try to come to terms with as a fan, but as a coach even, right? I'm sure Kenny wanted him to be out there. It's one of his best weapons. But at the end of the day, it made a lot of sense to sit him. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. But I do believe it's just one game at the end of the day. And again, these are cliches for a reason, but it's kind of speaks for itself. It truly does. One game does not determine the entire series. Had the Cavaliers won tonight, I would not have gloated and said that, this is a sweep. The Cavaliers are going to win in 4 or 5, because again, and it's not even what I said during the preview. I genuinely felt going into the series that it would go at least 6 games. And look, based on what you saw, you got some additional data. The Cavaliers were able to assess the situation a little bit more after gathering some initial data. And look, this looks like it's going to be a very, very competitive series. I knew it would. Tonight only further fuels that mindset, in my opinion. It truly does. It's going to be a competitive one that I do believe the Cavaliers will win, but man, it's not going to be as easy as a lot of people believed it would be. RC Collins says, Mac, thanks for your commentary on my comment. No problem, man. I'm trying to keep it objective here. I know there are a lot of people who are going to sway one way or another with this loss. I know if you're a Pacers fan, look, man, all credit where it's due. All credit where it's due. You went out there, you executed your game plan, you shot very, very well from the perimeter, from the field in general, and you executed defensively like you needed to. All credit where it's due. But surely the reasonable Pacers fans out there, not the people that are going to use this to overreact, not the people who are going to use this to say this is a Pacers series win in 5 to 6 games. The reasonable fan out there, I don't care who you are, whether you're a Cavaliers fan, whether you're a Pacers fan, the reasonable fan sees this game tonight and they probably think it's going to be a dogfight. Again, the Pacers shot 50+% from 3-point distance. The Cavaliers shot 23.7% from 3-point distance. They took many of Indiana's best punches. And Indiana did not necessarily blow Cleveland out. This was a very competitive game. And so for Cleveland to lose this game, and I believe they were down by 4 or 5 points at the half. And they shot very, very poorly. They got very, very little help. They gave Donovan Mitchell very, very little help outside of Evan Mobley and Ty Jerome. To lose this game, it's not at all, it's not a huge indictment on the future. This should be a very, very competitive game. Very, very, very competitive game. I would not get too high or too low, whether you're a Cavs fan or a Pacers fan. This series very much go either way. Ultimately, personally, I do believe Cavaliers win, but I would be an idiot, frankly, to say that the Pacers don't at least have a shot at taking this series. And I think that has never been more evident than after tonight's game. But I think that's going to do it for me, folks. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for chilling. I hope you guys if you're an outside, an outside observer, if you're not a Cavs fan, if you're not a Pacers fan, and you're just purely watching because it's playoff basketball, tonight was actually a very fun game to watch from an objective standpoint. It was crazy. It was all over the place. The pace was quick as hell. The shot making from Indiana was really, really good. There was some good defense being played at certain points of this game, mostly by the Pacers, but this was a fun game to watch. It was a fun game, objectively speaking, and hopefully people got a little taste of what is in store for the rest of this series, because I think it's going to be a dogfight. I truly do. I truly do. With that said, as I always tell you guys, if you'd like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier underscore pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot, etc. review to It's Cavalier53 at gmail.com, and I will send you said invite. If you want to support the pod in a small but helpful way, consider becoming a member over on Patreon. You can do so for as little as $1 a month. I'm trying to beef up the Patreon. I don't have a lot posted on there currently, but it does get you access to early content. It does get you access to the Discord chat. And again, like I said, I'm going to try and beef it up a little bit, but I got to do this. I got to do this just because it would be remiss if I didn't. Josh Z, thanks for the $5, man. He says, how much of the Pacers being hot from three was luck and how much was bad D from us? Honestly, if you want my honest opinion, Josh, I think that it was more so the Pacers shooting well, right? The closeouts did not help, but Indy made some really tough shots, really timely shots at times too. One of them was I believe Aaron Nesmith, rather. I think it was Aaron Nesmith, and there were a number of players that actually managed to do this. And you can throw Andrew Nimhard, because Nimhard and Nesmith combined to shoot 9 of 12 from three-point distance, but there are a number of Pacers that knocked down some very timely shots tonight. And yes, the closeouts, the poor rotations, the over-reliance on the zone defense, the preference to overhelp, the mentality of, oh, we're going to stop the dribble penetration, but at the end of the day, at what cost? I think that it's a combination of the two. But at the end of the day, you got to give credit where it's due. This Indiana Pacers team, and I'm going to say this one more time before I leave out of here, they entered shooting 39.3% from three-point range through the first round, rather. That's second in the NBA, only to Cleveland, who shot very, very well against the Miami Heat themselves. But while I do believe it's a combination of both of those things, I do so also have to give credit where it's due. I think that they got some really good shot makers over there. They truly do. Very efficient. Very, very efficient. We shall see how the rest of this game, or this series rather, goes. I do believe the Cavaliers end up winning it, but they got to prove me right. They got to prove me right. I laid out how I feel. I hope you guys will be with me every single step of the way. I'll be live streaming after every single game, and we'll have to roll with the punches here, man. I truly do. I do believe that we're going to have to roll with the punches. Go Cavs. Have a good night.